In this video, we're going to talk about service process design in the context of complex service processes. Service processes that may involve a number of process entities operating together, one feeding into the next. Our basic definition of a process is a sequence of steps that depend on one another, a sequence of steps that transforms some inputs and actions into outputs. A service process involves co-production, activities or actions that are shared between different actors or different entities. So let's go back to that pizza example. Cooking the pizza is only one part of what the pizza place has to do. You have to get the customer to tell you what kind of pizza he or she wants. You have to have a recipe for pizza. You have to have the pizza ingredients on hand. You have to get the oven hot. You have to do all kinds of things. In this diagram, the boxes represent process steps, and the arrows, the lines that connect the boxes, represent dependencies. A process step is usually an action taken on some object. In this kind of process diagram, the pizza place is our focal entity. We've put the boxes and arrows representing the process steps and dependencies into this little house-like shape. The different regions of this house-like shape represent different kinds of process steps. There is the stuff the pizza place does when interacting with others. That's the region of direct interaction. There is stuff the pizza place does with resources and information it gathers from others. That's the region of surrogate interaction. There is stuff it does on its own with its own resources and information. That's the region of independent processing. The more independent the processing, the more control you have over it. The closer to the center of the diagram, the more control you have. Now, these process diagrams can be much more complicated depending on how much detail you want to include. Like, there really are a number of entities in this picture, each of which is the star of its own process domain. For instance, here, there is the customer and the supplier, and each of them is their own process entity, and they have their own process steps in their own process domain. You kind of get a hint of that here at the edges. There's more to the story. We can open it up and create chains of these process diagrams that connect the different entities together. On the right here, there's the customer process domain, and on the left, there's the suppliers. The customer's got his or her own set of interdependent steps that link up with the pizza place's steps. The customer's got to be hungry. It's got to go to the restaurant. It's got to wait to be seated. It's got to read the menu. It's got to wait for the pizza. It's got to eat the pizza. It's got to pay for the pizza. Some of this is independent of the pizza place. If I'm hungry, maybe I go for pizza, or maybe I go make my own dinner. Developing an appetite is independent of pizza. There are surrogate actions, being at the restaurant, waiting for the table, reading the menu, and so on. These are things the customer does with resources and information provided by the restaurant. There's, of course, the direct interaction part where the customer and pizza place actually work together. We can move over to the other side of the diagram and consider the supplier as a process entity with its own process domain. There's probably a lot more detail that you could go into here, but at the very least, the supplier has to take the order placed by the pizza restaurant with information from the pizza restaurant and somehow satisfy that order. That counts as surrogate interaction because the supplier is operating on resources from its customer, which is the pizza restaurant. So, how can we chain process entities along in this kind of diagram? Where is the service? Where is the co-productive process in this picture? Well, it should be pretty clear that the entity's independent processes are their own actions, the provider on the left or the supplier on the left and the customer on the right. Those aren't co-productive. The part in the middle here, between the independent processes, that's where the service action is. The provider and customer interact directly, taking the pizza order, giving the pizza order, or they act on one another's behalf with one another's resources or information, making the pizza or waiting for the pizza. Now, processes do not stand alone, but they're embedded in larger chains of action and interaction. When diagramming the processes, we have to focus on one entity at a time. But to understand things fully, we have to build up larger pictures that incorporate more entities that provide inputs and make use of outputs. These process chain diagrams can make clear where service actions and service interactions lie, which is toward the edges of an entity's process domain.